Welcome to Bring It In Monday version. I'm Tom Haberstroh. That's Coach David Thorpe. You're noticing that Henry Abbott's not here. That's because we own this show now. We kicked him out. Henry's gone. We just kicked him to the curb. We thought, man, there's just too many bald guys on this show. So we decided to make a big waiver move and decided to kick him to the curb. But welcome to Bring It In, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I want to be clear. I wasn't feeling somehow outnumbered. I was outnumbered, but it didn't bother me that I'm not one of the bald guys. So don't blame me, anyone, for the fact that it's just one bald dude and one not so bald dude on the show anymore.
Yeah, Randy says, surprised it took this long. Me too, buddy. Me too. I had a great weekend. Ramadan Mubarak for everybody who's celebrating Ramadan this week. It is a bright, wonderful, beautiful day here in Charlotte. I spent all weekend outside pretty much. My Monday motto for everybody is get your hands dirty every once in a while. I was doing a lot of yard work, cleaning up the weeds, pulling up weeds all weekend. My hands hurt, my forearms hurt. And whether it's just like, doing something a little out of your comfort zone or just doing some gardening, get your hands dirty every once in a while, right, Coach?
Well, you're at least 20 years my junior, so I applaud you for that. Enjoy it while you can. I will admit that we fired our lawn guy. We've had lawn people for a long time. I'm an old man. And I have a push mower, literally a push mower, not gas, not electric. It's an old, I don't know how I got it. It was $50 20 years ago. Never was used once, but during the pandemic, starting last year, like last spring, I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to start doing it once a week. And it is a workout.
Wow.
I don't know that I'm doing year two. This summer almost killed me. We do hire someone to come in once a month and edge and some of the more difficult stuff. But I push, and I have an acre of land. Now it's not all grass, but there's enough grass to wear this old man out. So I don't disagree with you at all. My wife and I did some of the same. Every weekend we try to do a little bit. I think it helps keep it young. Henry's the gardener of the group.
No, we're not talking about Henry anymore. He's gone. He's out.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the rule. We're going that deep. Okay. But yeah, I did watch a lot of basketball too.
Yes, we have lots of basketball to get into. As a reminder, Judy mentioned in the chat, Mondays and Fridays, bring it in. Wednesdays are emergency, bring it ins. If something huge happens, LeBron's coming back or something like that, big news breaks, and we have a great guest or something like that, we'll bring it in on Wednesdays. But for now, it's Monday with me and Coach, and then Fridays with Gerard and Coach and Legal. So lots to get into on Friday night. Brooklyn, LA, they faced off and had a game which didn't have a lot of star power. Of course, AD and LeBron didn't play. Andre Drummond did play and had himself a game against the Nets. But of course, Kyrie Irving gets ejected for his verbal altercation with Dennis Schroeder. They get ejected, and it was a blowout after that. But I want to focus on that game, but also the larger implications of it. And we'll get into a little A-Rod thing later. We'll get into the meniscus tear for James Wiseman. But for now, let's settle in on the Nets, because I think this game symbolized a lot of the issues in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. Namely, where was everybody? James Harden was injured with a hamstring strain. Kyrie Irving was ejected. And you have Kevin Durant, who's playing, but he had 8 turnovers. And on the other side, Andre Drummond had like 22 points, 10 rebounds in like 19 minutes or something crazy like that. But I keep sitting here seeing the fact that everyone still thinks that the Nets, or at least Vegas thinks the Nets are the number one favorite for the title. And I can't, we haven't seen this team. We haven't seen this team in full force or even like half force for an extended period of time. And they get blown out. Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving have only played together for 6 games, just like that graphic said. They've had 2 guys on the floor for 30 of the 54 games of the Nets this season. They've had only 1 for 13 of those games and 0 of them for 5. So basically, they've had just as many times with 0 of those 3 stars as they have with 6 of those stars. And Coach, it's so hard to make sense of the Eastern Conference and the pecking order there, and largely the whole NBA, because this Lakers game and Nets game signified we just haven't seen these guys play together. So how much should we read into what happened in that game? Is it the story that there just weren't a lot of star players playing in that game.
Well, you bring up a really good point. You bring up a lot of good points always, but you bring up a good point about what are we supposed to believe, right? So you mentioned Durant's 8 turnovers. I watched all 8 of his turnovers. There were 2 things going on there. One was the last game he played before was against the Pelicans, and then he missed a bunch of games back to February. So he really played one game against a team that doesn't play defense. Okay, when I say don't play defense, it doesn't mean they're not guarding the ball, but they are. But they're weak side rotations. Their understanding of where they're supposed to be. The Pelicans are just bad. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. The Lakers are the best defensive team in the league right now. So a lot of what Durant was doing, I thought he just expected someone to be open and threw the ball. And the Lakers were all over his actions.
Yeah.
Right? I think 4 of the turnovers came from just really good defense and Durant being casual. Just expecting it to work because it worked last time. The other
a lot of bad passes, a lot of just 5 of the 8 were live ball turnovers. Yeah.
Right. He had an inaccurate lob pass. That wasn't the Lakers. That was him. He had a little dish to LaMarcus. That was my other point I was going to make. A few of the mistakes he made were because he doesn't know his teammates. I thought one of the times he expected LaMarcus to zig and LaMarcus did nothing. Whatever the opposite of zig is, it wasn't zagging. It was inertia. It was inaction.
Or the lob to Claxton, coach, like the lob to Claxton on the fast break.
Yeah.
These are timing things that you need reps.
He needs reps. He would have thrown a bad pass maybe to anybody because it was inaccurate. But I think that'll be solved. But knowing where your teammates are going to be in the postseason, when every defense knows what you're running, they hear the calls, they know your calls, so they know what's coming. It doesn't mean you can't execute. It's harder to execute. And you got to go to counters more when they take away what your main purpose typically is. Well, they're not going to even know themselves all that well. In fact, I would argue your opponents may know your calls as well as you, or better than some of you, because they at least have been guarding something like this all year. These guys haven't played together. That's a problem. And I want to mention something. We probably all read Malcolm Gladwell and his whole thing about 10,000 hours. And I don't remember which book that was of his. It was because he read so many. But he leads the book talking about the Beatles and how the Beatles, and he went and he interviewed people who knew the Beatles, listened to the Beatles before they went from Liverpool to Hamburg, Germany, 2 straight summers. And in Hamburg, which is apparently famous for all day and all night bar scenes during the summer months there in Hamburg, the Beatles were playing 7 days a week, like hours, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, every day. They did this for 2 straight summers. Outliers is what you do. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure because that's what the whole 10,000 hours thing with Bill Gates, whatever. So they interviewed people who said when they came back, the tightness of their music, the synchronicity, right? The synchronizability of the group. One thing to develop your skills, Tom. So Durant's going to get his skill game back. Kyrie's got his skill game back. But LaMarcus, who is rusty now, he'll be less rusty later. So that helps them individually. But in terms of team-wide connection of when to take it up a notch, when to go down a notch, when I know he's going to cut here or defensively, same thing, that's just not going to be there. And meanwhile, they're playing against some very, very good teams. Luckily for them, none of those teams are in the East.
Yeah.
Right? The Sixers are not dominant. They're very good, right? The Bucks are not dominant. They're very good. If they can get by them, then maybe they'll be good enough they'll have gathered enough steam, so to speak, to be able to beat some of these teams in the West. If they're in the East, they could be out in round 1. I mean, the West, they could be out in round 1.
Well, that story reminds me of something else that happened when I was covering the Miami Heat in Miami. Mario Chalmers and Ray Allen got in a fight on the court. They had this big argument on the court, and I remember the details of it were this. Mario Chalmers would practice with the Heat every practice, right? And he's this kind of he was this young point guard who had crazy amount of talent, but really wasn't, I guess, reliable from a coaching perspective to follow the rules or just, list X's and O's wise to not make mistakes. Wasn't that reliable as a point guard. However, Ray Allen wouldn't practice. Ray Allen was 36 years old and he would run before practice on a treadmill, or he would get his shots up before practice, but he really wanted to stay off his feet. And he didn't really participate as much in the playbook, X's and O's stuff in the practice with Spo. And his argument was like, look, I only have so many more miles left in these tires. I'm not going to burn it in a practice, right? Or in an X's and O's. So in the game, they run a play in a late situation, and Mario Chalmers drives and kicks out. And he kicked it out. I think it was in the corner, and Ray Allen was running out to the wing, and it was a turnover. And Ray Allen's just like killing Mario Chalmers, like, dude, I wasn't there. Why didn't you pass me over here? And Mario's like, you're supposed to be in the corner. And Ray's like, no, I'm not. He's like, yes, you are. And he's like, I kicked, that wasn't an open space. I moved over here. And Mario's like, hey, if you fucking participated in practice, you know the play is run for you to be in the corner and you're going to be open in the corner. And everyone was like, whoa, like Mario, like stepping up and saying, like, I've been busting my ass in practice. You're supposed to be over there. And if you participated in practice, we would have these beats down. But because you're off in the locker room getting treatment or whatever it is, we don't have that chemistry yet. You need to, understand that we have been in those practices working hard on getting the playbook down, and you aren't there. And it was, I think, a really cool moment, because you rarely hear a young player speak up to a Hall of Fame, one of the best shooters of all time, in saying he was wrong. And I think it was a good moment for Mario, not to say that he talked back,
right,
but that he had real meat there in his argument, is that I've put in the work. Now I need you to reciprocate, or at least cut me some slack. When I make a mistake, it's going to make me look bad because I'm Mario Chalmers and you're Ray Allen. But they didn't have that chemistry yet in practice. And I think it's instructive for this group, the Brooklyn Nets, because 8 of those turnovers, like we said, Kevin Durant is either forcing passes or he's going against double teams and trying to thread the needle against really good coverage. And he has to know where his teammates are in those situations. And a lot of times he was throwing at their feet or didn't have them in the right spot. And I think that's really important for people to understand, is that they can't just magically know where Landry Shamet wants the ball or where he's supposed to be in the offense, or Joe Harris. These are things that they practice, and they have no practice time. And when they do have practice time, these guys aren't playing. So I think the question I want to ask you, Coach, is if they're not getting a lot of chemistry by not practicing together, or Blake Griffin's not playing second nights at back-to-backs, or tonight Kyrie Irving's out for personal reasons, that'd be a concern to me that they're just not playing together. But then I look at the rest of the league and I see so many absences. Maybe relatively speaking, they have a lot of missed games for each other. But I wonder, in this season with COVID and with injuries all over the place, I wonder if it's not as big of a deal simply because everyone's going through this.
I think it's a big deal I think it's a bigger deal for them because they don't have any organic foundation, right? They at least Davis and LeBron have already gone through an entire season. Well, that's not fair. A full season. It wasn't a normal season, and won a championship, right? They got a good number of games this year. That duo is far better off than any duo the Nets have, right? Schroeder not being around as much, playing with them is going to have an impact. KCP was there, right? There are Marcus Gasol was there for a good part of the year this year. I'll talk about Drummond in a minute. But it's a mistake to think that, well, first of all, to your story on Mario, the reality is, remember, college players play the game, pros read the game. There are some reading in colleges too, of course, and high schools even, but just lower level. The reality is Chalmers read that the corner was open. Ray Allen read that it wasn't. That is the point of practice. That is, and remember, games are practice too, right? So you're totally right to point this out, that Ray bashing Chalmers for that read is wrong. And Chalmers, I'm glad he stuck up for himself. And had they practiced together, they would have likely made that mistake in practice first. Chalmers would have said, well, I read it this way. Ray said, no. Trust me, I've been doing this a long time. Yeah. I knew the defense was reading the same thing you were reading. That's why I came to the wing, and they work it out. Well, now they're going to have to work it out. Well, not them, the Nets, in a playoff game. And any one playoff game, any one play in any one playoff game can impact the entire series because it has to end at 7. Someone has to be a winner at 7 games. It doesn't keep going. You can't make it up. It's like in Vegas, you can't keep doubling your lost bet. That's where they put a limit. Otherwise, you keep doubling and doubling, and eventually you're back to 0, and then maybe you'd walk away. No. They stop you. Well, that's what a 7-game series is. Yeah. One play causes one loss, it could steamroll. So the question really becomes, how are they going to handle that? Because to me, how much are they trusting Kyrie Irving in the absolute dirt of a playoff series? Where is he going to be as a teammate? He may be great. I have no idea. But I think James and Kevin will be a little bit different. They're all a little different players. And then the second part I would say is defensively, all of these same things occur on defense. We just don't see it in the box score. All these same reads happen. And they're going to be, that's why they're bottom 15 all year. In the last 15 games, they're only 17th in defense. Like, it's not like they jumped up. They're just relying on an offense that might be very flawed to a team that knows what they're going to do. You can't win a series on nothing but contested mid-range shots by superstars, in my opinion.
So we were talking pre-show about Top Chef, and I'm going to bring a reference here because I think it's applicable to what we're seeing with the Nets. Top Chef is an amazing cooking competition show that I've been watching for like 2 decades, it feels like. And my buddy Kevin our friend Kevin Artovitz, we do a show called Pack Your Knives, and we talked about this with the most recent episode where 2 like super close friends, these women were like palling up and saying how much they love each other, and we're like the best of friends, and we're going to be amazing partners in the kitchen. And they produced a dish that was just not good. And they were stunned. They were like stunned when the judges didn't like it. And I remember thinking, well, part of that is you need a little bit of tough love when you're in the trenches, right? It's like when someone screws up, you have to put down your buddy status with your partner and say like, hey, you keep doing this thing and it's not working out for us. We need to fix that. And they didn't have that conversation. The plate that they put together was subpar, but they didn't have those tough conversations with each other because I think their friendship might have superseded any sort of, hey, I don't want to get in a fight with you. So let's just pretend everything's roses and rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
With the Nets, I wonder, because they've linked up based on friendships and because they wanted at this point in their careers to do something different. When shit hits the fan, coach, in the playoffs, when there's super high stakes and there's a lot of tension, are they going to be willing to have those conversations? And I think that's the thing that I want to know is, yes, they love each other. They love playing basketball with each other. It's part of the reason why they did this thing in Brooklyn, but they don't have the experiences together of adversity where they're on the court and they're screwing up and there's LeBron over there or there's Giannis over there. And man, if we don't play together, we're not going to do well. I wonder if those experiences now in the regular season are super valuable when things aren't going well. They need the adversity so that when it happens in the playoffs, they can actually overcome that and be like, hey, remember that time in February when we were turning the ball over and you're running the wrong play, you weren't running back on defense, and I got on you for that. I need you to step up like you did then. They haven't had that many opportunities to do that so far this season. So let's talk Andre Drummond here.
Yeah.
He statistically had an amazing game. He had a lot of high energy. He was, I think in many ways, what the Lakers need is they running the floor, like kicking LaMarcus Aldridge, leaving him in the dust in the open break. He got a lot of fouls, getting to the free throw line. But I wonder, what did you think of Andre Drummond's performance in a big game like that against the Brooklyn Nets with his new team? He's only played a couple games. And I think for not being on the floor for 1 or 2 months, that was a pretty impressive performance from him.
I thought that it wasn't really meaningful, and because everything you said is right, and it's going to be nothing like that when the duo is back. They're not ever going to isolate him. When I say not ever, almost never going to isolate him. His last basket of the game was an ISO against LaMarcus Aldridge. He bully balled him to the rim, scored on him, and then did the too little, which I didn't love that. Everyone's too little for you, Andre. Okay, you big dude.
Like LaMarcus Aldridge he's one of the largest human beings on the planet,
exactly.
And you're saying too little.
Yeah, come on, right.
Do you think Andre Drummond looks up at LaMarcus Aldridge? Because you can't really do a too little with a guy who's taller than you.
It's a little bit crazy.
It might be close.
But I will say that I think offensively, the Lakers have to be thinking, okay, if he can do that. Now, LaMarcus Aldridge is not a kind of top 10 defender, nor are the Nets, right? But in open, they want Drummond to do nothing but wide open dunks. And it looked like he can do that and make little short jumpers. He made a couple of those. The problem, Tom, and we don't know for sure how it'll be, because he's just getting back himself. Atrocious defensively, and I mean atrocious. Let me define that. It looked like he was a high school player on defense. There was a couple of times where he was able to be drawn towards the point guard and pick and roll in the middle of the floor. That wasn't a threat to score, but he was leaving LaMarcus, who scored a couple of times, who needed to be wide open if he wasn't going to be able to score. And I was shocked. I'm like, what is Andre doing? Just stay home. There was no reason to show. He did it 2 times, not once, twice. He went for fakes for no reason at all. Like LaMarcus faked him on a shot that if you know LaMarcus, you know he's going to fake. And Andre still jumped up like his big puppy. And LaMarcus, just turned and scored. Aldridge turned and scored. That may change. He might be super eager right now to do well. Marc Gasol would have stopped all those shots, but he would have scored 22.
Yeah.
So I think they can mix and match a little bit based on what the other team is doing successfully, or if they want to do it in a preventive fashion. Like, hey, this unit here is going to go inside a little bit. We need a better defensive player. We're going to go Marc, or we think we can take advantage of their interior defense right now. Let's play Andre. I think he's a nice fit for them that way, but it's like any team, they're going to rely on their role players only if AD and LeBron are super sharp. And I just have no way of knowing how sharp they're going to be. The West is going to be a bear for sure. There's a lot of really good teams there.
Coach, I couldn't agree with you more on Drummond, where defensively a mess, but I want to point to something that I don't think people who are in locker rooms or in the NBA bubble, reporting on teams and understanding how big ego is to a player's performance and confidence and feeling like I can do anything out there. Andre Drummond right now seems like he's super confident. And when he's not playing with AD and LeBron James, I can understand why he feels like, give me the ball every time down. I'm going to ISO up LaMarcus Aldridge, and I'm going to get to the rim. I'm going to get fouled. And I'm going to go to the line, or I'm going to dunk it, or I'm going to do a baby hook in the lane, right? He had a 38% usage rate in that game. Andre Drummond had a 30. That's Russell Westbrook 2017 season type stuff.
It's going to be 3.8 when those guys are back.
Exactly. And this is why I think this is a problem, is if he thinks his role on this team is to call for post-ups every time down the floor and show that he's got handle, which I don't think he does, he is a walking turnover. Like if in the playoffs against a good defense, they're going to eat him alive. If he's calling for post-ups on the block and trying to seal early on LaMarcus Aldridge, like, first of all, I think LeBron's smart enough to say that's not our best offense, but this guy is the second lowest efficiency in post-ups in the NBA this season, Andre Drummond. So many times he dribbles off his foot, or some guy, he puts the blinders on and a guy from the weak side swipes him. He is not a good post-up player, but he thinks he is, in the same way that Dwight Howard needed a huge gut check or ego check when he got traded or signed with the Atlanta Hawks, where he thought he was a 20 and 10 guy, but he wasn't that anymore. And he probably wasn't that guy unless he was in space, right? In his prime and he could move.
Right.
Andre Drummond, to me, this is not his role. What he did on Friday night should be goldfish memory, neuralizer, Men in Black style. Right. Forget about it. Because in the playoffs, we don't need that from you. We need you to bust your ass down the floor, rim run, set hard screens, and rebound. What you saw against LaMarcus Aldridge is not what the Lakers need. And I worry that when LeBron is like getting super hype on the sidelines for Andre Drummond and Kuzma's doing the too little thing on the sidelines, this is sending the wrong message to me long run. And in short run, I think this is good, pumping up your new teammate. You're great. We love you. Awesome. But in the long run, I worry that we're going to see Andre Drummond thinking, hey, I'm 38 usage guy. This is what you cheered me on for in March or April. This is what I'm going to do for you down the stretch. And I think it could backfire on the Lakers.
Well, you're right to be concerned or to notice this. I would argue that he'd be more of a concern with the Clippers than the Lakers, because as great as Kawhi is and as talented as Paul George is, they do not have the street cred, or for lack of a better term, than LeBron and AD. And I would throw AD out there. In the league, everyone knows LeBron's the best of all time in their minds, whatever, of course they played against him. But I've never spoken to a player that didn't stand in awe of AD, including guys that played with him. amazing teammate, amazing professional man. And I think last year when Henry and I talked this a lot last year in Gerard, when he got to LA last year and right away called out LeBron for his defense. He said this was in media day. I'm going to hold him accountable. Only AD can say that. He is that talented and good. And then they delivered with a championship, right? So as I see it now, if Andre Drummond is going to try to talk back to those guys, it's over quickly. He will get nothing but DNPs. But
they got Marc Gasol, who's not going to argue with those guys. And if he does, he's probably going to be
right. Even Marc Gasol walked back his anger over not starting all of a sudden and said, hey, I'm going to do my role perfectly. That didn't just happen by accident. Someone spoke to him, right? And I'm not saying LeBron and AD did, but those guys carry themselves a certain way. And I think if anyone can get Drummond to say, to accept a 3.8% usage rate, not 38%, it's those two guys. And then I'll throw this out there. Tom, it's one of the most amazing things of this season is the Lakers, without those guys, are number one in defense.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. That's coaching. I'm not taking anything from the players. Again, Durant's turnovers half of them came because Lakers, it's like there's 11 Carusos out there. He's everywhere. And so they ran a hammer play, which is a play where you go baseline and throw it to the opposite corner. And I'm guessing, I didn't go back and watch it, I'm guessing it worked against New Orleans the game before. But Caruso saw it coming a mile away. He knew what was happening. He went over there and stole it, no problem. So I give Vogel a ton of credit for building that formation that they have, that foundation of we guard your stuff. We take it personally when you score. We don't need to have two Hall of Famers on our team to shut you down. We may not win because we can't score, but by God, you're not going to score easily either. And so I think as bad as Drummond was the other night, and there's reasons for it, I'm hopeful for the Lakers that Vogel and staff will rally him up and say things like, stop trying to block every shot, contest and rebound. That's all we want you to do. Contest and rebound. Working on pick and roll coverages like I talked about. If he doesn't buy in, shame on him. Because if he does, they can be very good if that duo is healthy. If not, none of it matters anyway. But they are an interesting team because I think that let's put it this way. I like them better than Brooklyn. If it was a no East or West division, Tom, in the playoffs, I would pick the Lakers over Brooklyn right now. Right? Because Brooklyn might have an easier road in the East, it's a little different story. But I like
without LeBron and AD, you're still picking the Lakers, or you're saying
no.
Okay, I was like, man.
Just, right now, no one has anybody. Kyrie's out right now. Harden's out right now. Durant is barely playing. I still would think the Lakers will be better if those two guys were healthy, which I don't know. Apparently, AD's coming back this week though.
Yeah, that's big news. I'm curious to see how he looks after months off the floor and not much ramp up time. So, Coach, this was the battle of the buyouts when you saw LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond going at it with each other, and Blake Griffin didn't play well. There's a lot of talk about the buyout. Howard Beck wrote a great column for Sports Illustrated talking to some small market GMs who were complaining that this is the rich getting richer, is that the Brooklyn Nets, the Lakers, they just pile up all these buyout candidates. And oddly enough, Milwaukee wasn't really mentioned, even though they get a buyout candidate every year. Gorgie Jang goes to Indiana. No, Gorgie Jang goes to, where did he go?
The Spurs?
Spurs. Yeah, that's right. Spurs. So the point is,
he's good, by the way.
Yeah.
That was a good get for them. Yeah.
Like I would rather Jang in a lot of different places than LaMarcus Aldridge, for example, or Miami or something like that. Right. I think he can really help in the playoffs.
Right.
So now that there's some big name players going to big markets, marquee markets, there's a lot of talk about whether the deck is stacked against small market teams, and small market teams are saying anonymously, like, hey, this is not fair. The Lakers are getting Andre Drummond for free. The Nets are getting LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin for free. And my thing is, man, let's just wait.
Yeah.
Let's just wait to see how these guys go, because in the past we've seen Greg Monroe, Ersan Ilyasova, or Mike Bibby is the poster child for this in Miami in 2011, were buyout candidates, really big deal in March and April, but oftentimes hurt the teams more than they are helping in the playoffs. So what do you think about the buyout market fix? Do you think there should be a solution, or do you think there's not even a problem that needs to be solved?
Well, it could be both. I like how you put it. I don't know that there's a problem. It doesn't mean there isn't a better solution than we have now. I'd like to see it, but just you already proved this. Jang might have been the best buyout candidate, and he went to San Antonio.
Yeah.
Right. And the Bucks get someone every year, as you said, and so it's the winners that keep. If the rich aren't the big market, the rich are the winners. The Knicks ain't getting anybody. Right? It's the biggest market of all. It's the winners. And when is that ever not the case? Right? So if someone has a better idea, I'd love to see it. I'm a player first guy. I want these guys to be able to dictate what they can do. When you get bought out, your value goes down to zero. You can't build it back up, but there's not a lot of evidence that players do. Typically they don't. They stay they're minimum, they stay minimum the rest of their careers.
Here's the other thing, Coach. If you are a small market team and you don't like that these big name players are getting bought out and can go to great teams, don't sign them to huge contracts or trade for them on huge contracts, and then you can't trade them. Right? Like that's one piece of this puzzle that isn't getting talked about enough, is like Andre Drummond is getting bought out because he's on a horrible contract. $30 million, no one wants that contract. Right. And that's a contract that the Cleveland Cavaliers acquired and said, all right, we're going to take in this contract because we think he's going to be worth it. And, he's not worth it. Hey, we'll be able to trade him. Wait, we can't trade him? We got to buy him out? This is terrible. Same thing with Detroit. We can point to a lot of these examples, is that if we're upset about the rich getting richer, well, I think it's incentivizing small market teams to not overpay for players who don't deserve those contracts or take on those huge deals and then have to waive them because we couldn't find trade partners for them. So I think both teams have to tango here, is that small market teams have to understand that if you sign an Andre Drummond or acquire an Andre Drummond at $30 million a year, you're going to have to pay the price for that. The other thing is, like, we'll see. We'll see if Andre Drummond and LaMarcus Aldridge are really going to add to the coffers for those.
Blake Griffin, right? We'll
Griffin,
see.
We'll see. Yeah. And it brings me to my next point, which is a lot of people are thinking that like Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge are going to be, adding to this already star-studded team in Brooklyn. They have the best odds or the biggest favorites win the champion this season. Sorry, that was a jumbled sentence. And it's like, you got here are the odds from I use bettingpros.com because it for looking for this stuff, because it has like all of the odds, right, from all of the sports books. And I pulled up Fox Bet championship favorites here because we have Nets plus 250, Lakers plus 340, Clippers plus 500, Bucks plus 650, Jazz at plus 1,000, and then the Sixers at plus 1,300. Coach, we're going to play a little game here of Final Four, because I think our belief of who's going to be standing at the end of this thing and what Vegas thinks, and maybe it's not necessarily what Vegas thinks, but it's the one that they're going to price the market to get 50-50 on both sides of the ledger. But let's play a little game. You suggested draft the Final Four teams.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the first pick here.
Because, oh, wow. I was going to give it to you.
Well, because I'm feeling generous today. It's a beautiful day here in Charlotte. I just flipped the coin and it's heads. And you have a beautiful head of hair, so you win.
I have a bigger.
Who is going to be? We're going to draft the top four teams.
Yep.
2 from each conference.
And we can't
pick, and then we'll
can't pick. Right. We can't pick what the other guy picks. Right.
So your first pick to win it all this season, or
not to win it all, just to make it same thing though. It's our first pick. So of the 4, I'm going to go with the Jazz, which is not what Vegas thinks. They are wrecking the league and have all season. And we're allowed to defend our choice. I don't think you're thinking I'm stupid. Everyone keeps asking. I texted Henry over the weekend, like, are you watching what Donovan Mitchell's doing? He just hit 35 in a row, 3 straight games. The last guy to do that in the Jazz was Karl Malone, number 2 scorer of all time. Donovan's like 24 years old. He had two 50-point games against the Nuggets, not one, two, including a 57. And he's shooting 40% plus from three. He's a monster going downhill. I think he just set a record for himself in the last game with free throws. Free throws attempted. It's not a record. It was maybe most of the season. He's really quite unguardable right now, the way he's shooting the ball. And then they have Rudy Gobert in the back. They're the only team that's top three in both offense and defense. They're deep as hell. I thought Jordan Clarkson is the runaway winner for Sixth Man of the Year. I'm sure I'm right. But the only guy that has a shot at him is Joe Ingles, who plays on the same team.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in bench production in the playoffs, unless you have the world's greatest duo, Lakers, like the Lakers do. They don't have that. They have one. Donovan Mitchell is great. They have two guys off the bench that can absolutely lead your team in scoring when you've got your second unit in there. So I think they're the most likely team to make it to the finals in the West. So now you get to pick any team but the Jazz for either side.
I'm crossing off the Jazz because they were my number one team as well.
I figured they were. That's why I took them. There's some strategy to what we're doing here.
Got for the second pick in the Final Four draft of Monday Bring It In, I'm going to go with the Clippers.
That's exactly what I was going to do. Son of a gun.
Clippers are off the board. We have already picked our Western Conference Finals, Utah and Clippers, simply because with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the floor, they're healthy. I can't say the same thing for the Lakers. Their net rating is plus 15.8. Yeah. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. They play great ball. They have a top 10 defense on the season, and they have the best offense in the NBA at 117.7, which is insane. It's insane. Smashes all the record books with how their offensive efficiency. They pick up Rondo. I don't love Rondo in LA, but I do think that in the playoffs, playoff Rondo is a real thing, and he's such a cerebral player, smart player that I think in moments he can win them some games. I don't know if he's going to lose more games than win them, but we'll see. But I like their team. They're deep. And I just think the Clippers are outside of Utah, the best pick to get all the way to the Western Conference Final.
I have to say, Tom, I know you're a smart man. We've known each other a long time, but I was afraid you were going to be smart again because I was hoping you were taking these team. Because to me, the top two choices out west are the two that we picked. So I don't think I'm stupid. So good for you. You chose wisely, my friend. So now we have it's not fun of the East. But I'm going to go with, I think in the East, the team I trust the most is Milwaukee. They had won 8 in a row coming right before Giannis got hurt a little bit. I don't really know how bad he's hurt. But everyone's injured out there. We don't really know what's going on for most of these teams. I trust them. I trust them as a team that we know can play elite level defense. I trust that they've got the pain of previous years. We've talked about this before. I think will inform their future to some degree. They've gone through it. They can clean up what they know didn't work, not just on the court, but overall in the process of losing games. And Giannis is phenomenal. If indeed he can come back to being who he was, the guy still is an MVP level player. I think that because of their strength and the lack of the net strength, I'm choosing the Bucks before everyone in the East.
I'm actually, I have the Bucks in my 4 spot on the big board, the Haberstroh big board. I have some other team in the 3rd spot, Eastern Conference team. It's the 76ers. I have them above the Bucks. I actually have them above the Nets too. So that means we both don't, or at least I don't think that the Nets are going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is, of course, irrespective of how the seeding works out in the matchups. But I love the 76ers this season. I think they should be shooting more threes to kind of space the floor. Ben Simmons is taking more jumpers now, which is great. But with that kind of spacing with Seth Curry, Danny Green, and Korkmaz, they've got great shooters. Shake Milton can be a great player off the bench to get buckets. I just love this team, and they have so much, I guess, institutional knowledge of just Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in the playoffs. We still do have a lot of games of those two guys in the playoffs that it's not like they need to build chemistry on that in that department. I have Philly with those two guys on the floor, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, plus 15.6 net rating, which is insanely high, right there with the Clippers and Kawhi and Paul George. And the second thing is that starting lineup with Seth Curry, Tobias Harris, who's balling out, 50, 40, 90 guy this year. That starting lineup is just gangbusters. So in the playoffs, the rotations shorten and those star players play more minutes. So you want to pay attention to those on-court net ratings a lot more of the star players, because in the regular season, a lot of those garbage minutes, they just don't matter in the postseason. So you want to look at those net ratings of those star power starting lineups just to get a sense of how good they are. And the Sixers I think they got the full package. They need to do a little bit better offensively, but I think they are so legit. Both of their stars are stars on both ends of the floor, which is so hard to find in today's NBA.
Really great point. It's the same as the duo in LA. It's exactly. I mean, Davis and LeBron can wreck you on both sides.
And you need that in the postseason. Like Draymond Green can lead the team in assists, but also he's going to be, the best defender on the floor.
Durant too. Durant. Yeah, I know that would have been my other choice, Tom. So now
we don't have the Nets here. Did you not have the Nets in your top four?
No, I had the Sixers. And so I can't take the Sixers. So I'm still not taking the Nets, Tom. The East is built around surprises because of the relative weakness overall of the league. The Heat showed it last year. We've had surprise Toronto with their run. Not that they weren't a very good team, of course they were. The Celtics, to me, are a better bet than the Nets. They're starting to play better.
Wow.
I like Robert Williams at center. The most important thing to me, they made 2 of the last 3 Eastern Conference Finals. Okay? And I still think Jason Tatum has something left. And it's not because he just went crazy the other day. Oh, yeah, 47? Is that what he had?
He had 50 piece. Yeah.
Was it 50? No, you're right. It was 50, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, Boston's crazy because they for a team that has played a lot of minutes together with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it just seems like they're inconsistent from night to night. But Jason Tatum is balling out recently.
Kemba's to me the biggest concern. They've got to have Kemba, and it's probably because of injury. They've got to have Kemba playing consistently better. I love the kid, rooting for him. I trust them before I trust the Nets. So you got to take the Nets now. You can't take Miami. Well, you can.
Do I take Miami here?
Processing.
I was kind of hoping you'd take the Nets, so I wouldn't be the one to pick not Nets again.
Listen, that's instructive too for everyone. We do not. I don't trust them.
I don't either. And
we're gonna get hard, man.
We're gonna get Gerard here, I believe, for the last segment on the show. But I'm gonna take the Miami Heat in a 7-game series over the Brooklyn Nets.
Let's go.
I have a better feeling of. We saw it last year. They just destroyed the Bucks.
Yeah.
They destroyed the Bucks and outplayed them. Veterans, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo are healthy. I can't say the same thing for the other stars in Brooklyn. And I'm sorry, I have a better feeling about Jimmy Butler in the playoffs than I do Kyrie Irving. And the health questions all over the map in Brooklyn. Real quick, Gerard, you're there. I just want to mention James Wiseman tore his meniscus over the season, reportedly tore his meniscus on a bad fall over the weekend. I wanted to get Coach your quick thoughts on this before we bring in Gerard on the Nets talk.
So Gerard, did you see the play when I saw the play live when he got hurt?
I did.
He was playing really well again. It would have been 3 games in a row, and I say really well. It's his role has been narrowed as I wrote. It should. They did it before I even wrote it. They just kept it simpler, and he was feeling himself. And so he's racing the court. He goes to dunk the ball on the Rockets kid, and he jumped off one leg. And I saw it live, and I knew right then. I didn't know it was a torn meniscus. I suspected it was. It didn't look like an ACL. And sure enough, I think that's the diagnosis that's been reported is meniscus. And I don't, Judy, do we include Tom the dunk with great dunk. I have a great dunk there, Judy. The Bridges dunk.
Yeah.
from Charlotte. He has this monster dunk over Capella, and it's a 2-foot dunk. And I was really happy with the announcers for the Weissman game, whatever the game was on. Here's the Bridges dunk here. I love Clay Capella. I'm not all fired up about a dunk, but Bridges really does a monster kind of a windmill dunk on a 6'10" Capella, but it went off 2 feet, and that's the point. The announcer for the game said what I was thinking right away, which is had he gone off 2 feet, he probably has a much better landing. And I really think that's important. If you're going to be contested at the rim, I'd rather you go up 2 feet. If it doesn't guarantee you won't get hurt, you could land on the guy's foot, for example. But the chance of getting hurt go way down. And so I hope Weissman picks up from that and realizes, because he can jump off one leg or two just fine. It was sad to see. And I know, but the Warriors might be better because of it. They'll play Looney more, although they don't have another backup that's got experience. So that backup will struggle. But it was too bad. I wanted him to have some confidence for next year. You could tell he was really shaken. Like, I don't think he's ever been hurt like that before. So, we'll see how it comes. Luckily, it's meniscus, not ACL. He should be fine. All right, Gerard. So don't take it personal. We are not believing in Brooklyn, although we allow for them to turn it around. We know the talent. What do you
No. You and Tom are haters, and you operate under this ridiculous mindset. Tom pulling out his numbers here, but conveniently omitted Brooklyn's starting lineup of plus 17.4 net rating, which I dropped in the chat right there.
Can you remind me the players on that one? Yeah.
That's KD, Kyrie, Harden, Harris, Jeff Green.
Oh, Jeff Green.
In the 6 games they played?
That's 17.4 net rating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wait, did you say 6 games?
5 games, whatever it is, 7 games, whatever it is.
17.4 is pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So
if I put a minimum of 6 games, I wonder what kind of net ratings I would see for all.
I'm sure. Listen, we all got just small sample sizes everywhere.
Just
what do you think? What do you think, Gerard?
This is what I think. I don't disagree with any of the teams you picked. But if you're going to say, we're 50 games into the season, right? That's a decent enough sample size.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So 50 games into the season, the team that's the number 1 team in the East with the 3rd best record, you're saying, a team like Boston and Miami, who have been atrocious for their 50 games in comparison, oh, yeah, we take them over the Nets. It's like, what? No.
I hear you.
No.
I'm disappointed in myself, too.
No.
I just can't. I can't.
At the end of the day, we talk about it all the time. I made the video about it. Like, championship is luck, right? It's a lot more luck goes into it than – because, look, the Lakers can slide. Utah then ends up having the Lakers in round 1, and, no. So much for your theory about the Jazz being so great because they'll probably lose in round 1, right? Like, it's just how things work sometimes. So my point just being, I think they've put together a decent enough body of work. And we've also seen in the postseason, and again, this isn't a guarantee, and it's why I'm with you guys and picking the teams that you did. It's going to be hard to beat those 3 dudes 4 times out of 7. It just is.
Are we sure they're going to all play in the playoffs?
That's assuming everyone all plays.
Right.
The Lakers are healthy.
But the biggest predictor of injury is previous injury. So when you look at a guy who's both stars are coming off of hamstring injuries, and forget about the Achilles injury for KD.
No doubt.
That's a concern for me. And I feel a lot more confident that Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler will be playing every one of those games than I am and that comes into baked into my pick there. And also, on that note, I think they have the highest ceiling.
For sure. Well, Gerard nailed it. Despite everything, they're the number 1 seed in the East. I can't argue that fact. It is a fact. It is why you're right, Tom. They do have the highest ceiling. And I'll just say this. To me, Gerard, it's not, there's no karma. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But, and I've witnessed teams change. I've seen teams going the wrong way in the postseason, and then something happens. The Miami team that beat Dallas in 2006, I've said this before, I think they were 2-2 against the Bulls in round 1, and they were melting down. They were the top seed. And then they beat the Bulls twice more, and then they routed the Nets in 5 games. They crushed the Pistons, who are always winning the East, and they won a championship. So that's when they had that big family pit, remember, in the middle, Tom, in the locker room, and I actually was in the locker room. I saw it. It was very cool. But they were 2-2 against the Bulls, and then something clicked. I don't know how they handle getting tagged in game 1 or game 2 in a series. I don't trust it yet.
No doubt,
but
we haven't seen it, right? Like, but it's also similar with, I mean, in theory, we haven't seen it in Utah, right? Like, sure, regular season looks great, but we haven't seen you do it either. And
That's true.
Injury luck matters, right? Utah has been probably the healthiest team.
Super lucky, yeah.
Well, what if they get unlucky all of a sudden, right? Like,
True.
It's just, who knows how this is going to work? So I don't disagree with any of the teams you picked. I just err on the side of I like the upside there, because if those three guys there and if they're healthy, which are both big ifs, that's a lot of star power to combat. And the other team that you guys didn't mention, but I understand why you didn't, Denver Nuggets. That's the only other team that I
right.
Phoenix,
I would have if they were in the East.
Yeah.
I would have if they were in the East. They're very good.
Yeah.
Do you guys know why the Mint City, the Mint uniforms for Charlotte, why they exist?
No.
The first gold rush in America was not in Denver or in San Francisco. It was in Charlotte. There was a little rush, a gold rush, because some kid stumbled upon like an 8-pound gold nugget in like 10 miles outside of Charlotte. And so that's why you see like the Knights, the AAA team, are gold colored, and then you see the mint stuff for the Hornets, because like the first U.S. mint, or one of the first U.S. mint establishments, were in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And that's the big color.
So
I did that.
nicely done.
That explains why in my childhood we would summer in the mountains of Carolina, stay a little nice, little not very nice motel. But all day long with 4 kids, we would mine. They had little mining things you could set up, and you would get the dirt and you'd sift through it. And you're hoping to find a sapphire or ruby. I think my parents found a few, but there were tiny little things. It was a sham job to take our money as done as tourists. But that explains why it is.
Speaking of gold,
Yeah.
A-Rod.
Oh, yeah.
A-Rod is now in an agreement to, along with his partner, business partner, to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves from Glenn Taylor. I believe that the transaction would be executed for the 2023 season. But now there's all sorts of talk about what this means for the Minnesota Timberwolves and whether they're going to be moved or they're going to stay to Minnesota. Because we can't just look at a news item like this. We have to think like, wait a minute, what's the drama here? What's the next piece that we need to talk about? Zach Harper had a great tweet about this. He, of course, says cover the Minnesota Timberwolves, a great pal of the show. He mentioned on this topic of whether they're going to be moved that Clay Bennett, when he bought the Seattle Supersonics, had said the same thing, which is Clay Bennett reiterated that stance by email to NBA Commissioner David Stern, saying Aubrey McClendon, who is OKC exec and former exec, and I have never discussed moving the Sonics to Oklahoma City, nor have I discussed it with any other member of our ownership group. That is a non-denial. That is, we have not said anything, so therefore it is not true. We have never discussed it. That doesn't mean we're not going to discuss it. And of course, the Seattle Supersonics got kicked to the curb and they moved the team to Oklahoma City. So Gerard, when you saw that A-Rod was buying the Minnesota Timberwolves, what was your first thought on that story?
This is what it looks like when a super rich person goes through a breakup, right? Like you go through a breakup, you buy like clothes, you get some retail therapy, whatever, gonna buy some more music. He's like, I want to buy a baseball team, man. Me and J-Lo broke up, like a basketball team. I don't know. Life is crazy. I mean, I like it because Glenn Taylor's been so terrible as an owner, right? So I like the idea of getting some fresh blood in there. I don't trust that it's not going anywhere, though. To your point, Tom, like people say all kinds of shit. Like, okay, sure, I'll believe it when it doesn't happen, right? Like when we don't hear it or when they don't move, I believe that. Though I do think that the league does want to expand. Though I think that's a terrible idea, but that's just me personally.
Why do you think it's a terrible idea?
Because our whole issue, there's so much issues about ratings and who's watching and whatever. And I just feel like in this market, like domestically, I just don't know what other cities can take on a full-on professional sports team and sell out and do all the things and make money. Maybe Vegas, maybe Seattle. I don't know. Like, and I don't want the product spread out anymore, right? Like, I think I like it at 30. If you're going to expand, why don't you do like London or something, right? Because then with the flight there or whatever, you can figure that out. They want to go international anyway. But we'll see. I like the idea if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. The thing as a fan is that you can never change his ownership. Like if you're stuck with a crappy owner, like, sorry, man, like sucks to be you, but your team's going to be terrible. Like, so I'm happy for Minnesota fans that guy's going to be getting out of there. And someone like A-Rod, I assume, will want to be competitive. So we'll see.
Why did they leave Seattle? I really don't even know the answer to that. Was it just because he wanted to move the team to Oklahoma City?
Yeah, money or something. I don't know.
But was Seattle not supporting the team?
There was an arena issue, Seattle's arena issue, and that was David Stern. I think his biggest issue was like they wanted a modern, with all the strappings of a really good modern arena, and they just didn't have it there in Seattle. And of course, I think by moving the team to Oklahoma City, I think they were thinking this would be good marketing for our own businesses in OKC.
Right.
And Aubrey McClendon, man, there should be a documentary about that guy. If you don't know his story, you should check that out. He shows up in Fire Festival, and So anyway, I do think that it's also interesting that A-Rod came up through the Seattle Mariners program. So I don't know if it's so outlandish to think that there might be a little bit of part of him that wants to like make things right after he signed that $252 million contract with the Texas Rangers, leaving Seattle, which by the way was signed because his agent was Scott Boras, and Kevin Garnett with the Minnesota Timberwolves had just signed a $126 million contract, the largest contract in all the four major sports. And A-Rod went in there and was like, 126, let's double it and I'll get signed to a 250. Like, why 252?
Is that what it was?
And it was, instead of 250, it was 252 because he wanted, I don't know if it's ever been confirmed, but the 252 was double the biggest contract ever given to an American athlete in the four major sports. And of course, Kevin Garnett was trying to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he gets dunked on by A-Rod, who also dunked on him indirectly a few years ago, back in the day when they were playing. So it's just rich. So
I wonder, I don't know that it'll have any impact at all. And I don't even know A-Rod's story with his, I guess he's dating Jennifer Lopez, whatever. Don't really pay attention much to that stuff. I do know that another person was killed by cops in Minneapolis over the weekend. And I just wonder if the choice to leave will ever be a better time than right now, right? It's gonna take a while to buy the team. If the love for that city, and I've been in Minneapolis a ton, I've had players who played there that really liked it. But the evidence is pretty clear right now what's going on. I just wonder if that's going to play some kind of role. I don't know if Seattle's built a new arena. I don't like also that Taylor. I know people have been trying to buy the Timberwolves for years.
Yeah.
Some people that I know personally have tried to buy the team. And I never understood why Taylor always wanted to stay involved for a couple of years. I felt like, no. When I buy your house, you're out. I own the house now. It's not like you need his genius to make sure things go okay for the next couple of years. So I think that was just kind of weird to me that he'll still be there 2 more years. And but they're buying the Minnesota at the right time because you've got a talented guard, a super talented center that could be traded, the number 1 pick potentially coming depending what happens if they do a deal for like Wiseman, which may not now because of the injury. But still, they got some talent there.
Yeah, if I'm taking over that team, and it sounds crazy, but that's what I do because you're so far away from winning. Like I'm moving Karl Anthony Towns, right? Just because you can get a lot back for him because he's so valuable.
Yeah.
And then because you got to build from the ground up with your super young guys because it's just you're not going to be on the timeline when Cat's like in his prime and just you won't be there. Last thing, Tom, that we really should mention.
Yeah.
Seeding, and I said it last time too. Seeding is going to be so important in this postseason. If you're in the East, you really want that 1 seed because having to beat both of the the other 2 top teams just makes your road more difficult. In the West, I don't think you have any choice. It doesn't matter what seed you're in. You're gonna have to play 2 really good teams to get out of the Western Conference Final. That's just how that's gonna go.
And maybe a team like Dallas and Luka in round 1, who are playing really, really well right now.
Yeah.
We got 1 minute left in the show before legal steps in and shuts this thing down. Last thing here is a lot of dunks here. A lot of dunks in the season, in the games last night. I'm a big fan of the calls from Eric Collins from Charlotte here. I might be a homer, but
he's good. He's good.
It was, there's nothing better. If you've seen the 7-10 split with the bowling thing that happened.
I put this on it. Yeah.
Yep.
It was incredible. And the commentator just made it 1,000 times better. So Collins, anyone who's commentating, sound like you're a kid watching the game. It makes it so much more enjoyable. I love those highlights matched with the enthusiasm of the commentator. It's so much cooler.
Yep.
Yeah. The Bridges dunk, that they only scored 2 points the rest of the game, by the way, and the Hawks did not come on the game. Yeah, I don't get so excited about dunks anymore. I was much more excited about the guy picking up the 7-10 split. What do they call him? Ginger or something or other?
Oh yeah, the
Ginger Assassin.
Ginger Assassin. That was really funny. I didn't love his shirt, by the way. If you saw the video, it wasn't my favorite shirt, but
we gotta go. I'm not gonna run this late on my first day on the job. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Friday. Gerard and Coach Henry, we love you, buddy. We miss you, and we'll talk to you later.
Take care, guys.